Shalom, everyone. So I'll just give us a quick reminder of what we did last time. It was a while ago because we had Pesach in the middle. Last time we met, we studied two paragraphs of HaRav Kook. I'll kind of try and just bring them in short. First thing he said was that all beliefs divide into two categories: true beliefs and necessary beliefs. If you believe in a God, that's the truth. But what is God? What do you say about God? You can say, Hayata. You say all kinds of things that you don't really know about God, but people need a framework. Like for Ovdei Avodah Zarah, they need a statue. And so we have to give God a kind of figure, and sometimes we overdo it, or people understand. The example we gave was people understand the descriptions of God in the Tanakh that are physical descriptions to be actually physical. And the Rambam will say that's mamash heresy. And the Ravad will say, well, people need it. So if they misunderstand it, that way it's not absolutely heresy. And they argue about that where we draw the line. And Rav Kook's point was that religions have a development which is growth, which means they're purifying their understanding of their belief. And for some people, that purification is that growth is actually terrible. It seems like it's kfirah, like it's total disbelief, like it's total heresy, because for them, they need the necessary beliefs to hold on to the true beliefs. Whereas for others who have grown in a certain spiritual and intellectual sense, they no longer need the necessary beliefs to believe in the true beliefs. For instance, they don't need the belief in Hashem having a physical form to believe in Hashem creating the world and having control over the world. And so for some people, keeping the necessary beliefs is holding them back. For some people, giving up on the necessary beliefs is pushing them away. And they're both right, because each one has something else that he needs. And somehow, somebody has to try and find a way to accept. That's why sometimes you have, we didn't mention this last time, but like in Kabbalah, sometimes you have something that's secret, so that some people will understand it, because for them, it's making their belief grow spiritually. But if other people understand it, it will make them feel they'll fall into heresy. So sometimes you have to be very delicate and find a fine way to be able to bring that across for different people. And that's important. This background is important, both for our discussion of Judaism and for what we are about to do, to discuss Judaism relating to other religions and specifically Christianity. But before we go there, we saw another paragraph of HaRav Kook about things that descend from the stage of history. They leave, meaning they've done their job. And Judaism has had an influence and impact in the world, but we are not stepping down from history. We have not achieved our goal. So we are not stepping down. HaRav Kook calls it, we're like giving a speech to the world. It's taking a few thousand years of speech. We stand in the midst of our speech, and we neither wish nor are able to stop. We're not about to stop. So part of our speech, the two paragraphs in HaRav Kook's notebooks are one after the other. 125 and 155 and 156 in one of paragraph 155 and paragraph 156 in one of his notebooks. Sometimes there are paragraphs that come right after the other and are connected. Sometimes a series of paragraphs. Rav Kook was thinking on that day and he wrote something down, wrote another thing down, and it came together. Sometimes no connection between paragraphs, but here I put the two together. I understand how they're connected, because Rav Kook is saying in paragraph 156 about paragraph 155 that this is part of the influence of Judaism on the world. We want to cleanse other nations, other religions' beliefs, and it's a gradual process. So we're still working on it. We have had some influence, and we'll discuss that in more detail today. And we still have a lot of work to do about it. What we're going to see today is not from the same source, not from the same notebooks. It's something it's actually a very long piece relative to Rav Kook. We are absolutely not going to get through all of it today. It will take us twice, I believe, if not more, but at least twice. But it's very, very precious, very, very special. I think it's worth the effort, which means if I had my even younger students there are students that are even younger than this group, and they are very impatient. You bring a long paragraph. Oh, no, it's too much. It's too difficult. I have faith in this group that we're going to brace ourselves and work through it. It's not going to be easy, but we'll do it. But before we do that, I'd like to share with you something from the Rambam, which is, this could take a whole discussion also, but I'd like to just go through it and not spend too much time on it. And it's a good introduction and basis for what we're going to see in HaRav Kook. And here we come. That's HaRav Kook, and this is Rambam. Okay, so here we go. The Rambam says this in the second to last chapter of all of the Mishneh Torah, the whole big compilation that he wrote about halacha, which begins with belief in the Creator of the world, and goes through all the halachot that have to do with accepting the yoke of Hashem, including the prohibitions of avodah zarah, of idol worshipping, and all the times, the Shabbat and all the chagim, and kashrut, and men and women, and everything, and nedarim. How do you say nedarim? Making
vows,
and how to do a hatarat nedarim if a person needs that, and everything there is, kings and sacrifices and Beit HaMikdash, everything, because he felt that the Torah Shebe'al Peh, the oral Torah, became too large a body of study, of knowledge, and people can't get it all. So he put it into this one book with 14 parts, and even that now is too much for people to get. But in any case, at the very end, the last topic is Hilchot Melachim, kings, and the last two chapters of Hilchot Melachim is the king. Who is the king? Mashiach. So it ends. So this is like it's like the Rambam telling us, if you follow this whole structure from the foundations, which are belief in the Creator, we will reach Mashiach. If we build the building right, we will reach the King who is Mashiach. So this is in the second to last chapter. It's chapter 11, and then there's chapter 12. Here in chapter 11, he's talking about Mashiach and a king who will be Mashiach, and he says the following. If a king will arise from the house of David, who diligently contemplates the Torah and observes its mitzvot, as prescribed by the written law and the oral law, as David HaMelech, his ancestor, compels all of Israel to walk in the way of the Torah and fights the wars of Hashem, meaning he keeps mitzvot himself, he studies Torah, the word here is compels all of Israel to walk in the way of the Torah, and maybe 900 years ago we weren't ready to change that word, but maybe today we would rather say he influences all of Israel rather than compels all of Israel to walk in the way of the Torah. But in any case, he gets all of Am Yisrael to walk in the way of the Torah. He fights the wars with the enemies in the name of Hashem. We may with assurance consider him Mashiach. That's the translation. The word in Hebrew is Harehu bechezkat Mashiach, meaning we don't know for sure that he's Mashiach, but we may consider him, and I decided to call this in English, consider the possibility that he may be Mashiach. Maybe this is Mashiach. He's moving things in the right direction.
Of King David?
No, right now we don't. Natalia asked if we know who is a descendant of David HaMelech. Just as a side point, according to my family lineage, I might be. So if you're looking for someone, we can meet tomorrow if you're interested. Interviewing for the job.
Doing this political stuff.
Yeah.
Starting on the road.
Okay, but no, we don't know. And we need maybe a prophet to tell us that or something like that. If he did not succeed or was killed, so what are we going to say now? Is this a Mashiach Sheker? Was this man a liar, a phony Mashiach? So Rambam says no. He surely is not the Redeemer promised by the Torah. Rather, he should be considered as all the other proper and exemplary kings of the Davidic dynasty who died. He's a good guy. He tried, he made progress, he got Am Yisrael to move forward. Good for him. He didn't say, I am the Mashiach. He helped us in the right direction. He's a good king. But what if, let's look at some others who claim to be Mashiach. And then he moves on to discuss Jesus. Can there be a greater stumbling block than Christianity? He claims to be the Mashiach. Christianity caused the Jews to be slain by the sword, their remnants to be scattered and humbled, the Torah to be altered, the Torah, and the majority of the world to err and serve a God other than the Lord, the Son of the Lord instead of the Lord, things like that. Nevertheless, the intent, so I'm taking a small part of this paragraph. Then the Rambam goes on to say who is Mashiach. The way I like to present it is that good king, that positive king, is part of a lineage that can then build one floor on top of the previous one. You build the whole building, and at the top of the building we reach Mashiach. And then, since you made fun of me that I'm not really Mashiach, so I'm going to appoint myself to be the speechwriter of Mashiach. And the speech he's going to give, the real Mashiach, when we reach the Geulah, he's going to say, it's not me, it's my ancestors. I just completed the job that they started. Okay, that's the main theme of the speech. So Mashiach does not have to be one person who did everything from 0 to 100. It can be a process that goes through some generations of leadership in Am Yisrael until we reach Geulah. But that's not the point of the shiur today. In contrast to that, the Rambam presents Christianity, and he says that's way off, totally opposite to what Mashiach is supposed to do. There is no greater stumbling block than Christianity. But, nevertheless, the intent of the Creator of the world is not within the power of man to comprehend. For his ways are not our ways, nor are his thoughts our thoughts. This is a pasuk in Yeshayahu. Ultimately, all the deeds of Jesus of Nazareth and that Ishmaelite who arose after him, Muhammad, will only serve to prepare the way for Mashiach's coming and the improvement of the entire world, motivating the nations to serve Hashem together. As Tzfanya, who is one of the 12 smaller prophets in Treasal, as Tzfanya states, I will transform the peoples to a purer language that they will all call upon the name of God and serve him with one purpose. Bring all the nations together with one God, speaking the same language, whether it's the same language in the way we use language today or the same language of faith, to call the name of Hashem and serve him with one purpose. And that's Geulah. But Christianity and Islam, says the Rambam, the same is said in a different way by Ramban, Nachmanides, and also by Rabbi Yehuda Levi and the Kuzari. But the Rambam says it here very clearly. It's a stumbling block, but it also is something that moves things in the world in the right direction. How will this come about? The entire world has already become filled with the mention of Mashiach, Torah and mitzvot. The world has learned from the Christians about the existence of the 5 books of Moses that they call the Old Testament. If you look at our dear friend, Shlomo Brunel, who was a Lutheran minister and converted and lives in Israel, Baruch Hashem, and his family, beautiful family, is in Israel. And he said, I grew up on the Old Testament and the New Testament, and then it didn't work out for him because the Old Testament said not to change things, and then why are we doing Sunday and not Shabbat, and other examples, and that he ended up becoming Jewish. But if there wasn't Christianity, and in Scandinavia they were still worshiping idols, he may have never heard about the Old Testament. So this is part of what the Rambam is saying. These matters have been spread through the furthest most islands, even Scandinavia, to many stubborn-hearted nations. They discuss these matters and the mitzvot of the Torah, saying, these mitzvot were true, but were already negated in the present age and are not applicable for all time. Others say this, others say that, but they know about it, and they hear about it, and they hear that one day there's going to be redemption, and there's going to be a Messiah, and the nations will worship one God. So this is how Christianity and Islam have a part in a positive part in the process. When the true Messianic king will arise and prove successful, his position becoming exalted and uplifted, they will all return and realize that their ancestors endowed them with a false heritage, and their prophets and ancestors caused them to err. I bring this piece of the Rambam, or this kind of censored Not because I'm afraid you'll go read the whole thing. Go read the whole thing, please, from A to Z. But I'm bringing this to say that the Rambam is giving us a kind of perspective forward, that the world is going to move forward in a process. It's not one day we're going to wake up and everyone is going to believe in one God and in the Torah. There's a long process. The process can happen within a certain nation. That's what we saw the previous time. Am Yisrael can have an influence on it. And the influence that we have on it might even be through other religions who are based on the Torah, on the 5 books of Moshe, on the Tanakh, before moving on to other beliefs. So even though they are false, they can be part of a positive process for other nations to be going through. So this is what I'm taking from the Rambam, and I'd like to use it as a base to go on to see what HaRav Kook is going to teach us.
Okay.
So here it is. This is okay. So this is a book called the Nevochei Hador. It might be sitting here on the shelf right behind me. Is it here or is it not here? So at once I don't see it now. In any case, if you know the book in Hebrew, More Nevuchim, Rambam it's called the Guide of the Perplexed. Navoch. Navoch is someone who's confused, is perplexed. In the Rambam, perplexed is a person who you should each have. Oh, there's an extra one. So you should each have 2 pages that are 3 pages. Okay, so that's extra. So what's that?
The first one. From the Rambam.
That's the Rambam. Sorry, didn't need that. Okay, so thank you. So no. I have it on the computer. You can keep this. I'm saying. Okay, so the Guide of the Perplexed. The perplexed in the Rambam is a very, some people say they never study the Guide of the Perplexed because I have very great emunah. I'm not perplexed. They never read the Rambam's introduction to the Guide of the Perplexed, in which he writes that the highest people are those who are perplexed. Meaning, if you've studied the Torah and studied logic, philosophy, and you see that there are places where it doesn't mesh together, then I have to explain to you, either you have a mistaken philosophy or you're misunderstanding the Torah, which is fascinating. And I'll explain the Torah to you according to philosophy. If you read in the Torah that Hashem's hand will smite the enemies, and then you philosophically reach the realization that God cannot have a physical form, and it's not working for you. So I will explain to you that you are right. You're just misunderstanding the Torah. The Torah meant for a parable. It didn't mean that Hashem has a physical form. So all kinds of things like that. So being perplexed is a high level. You've studied and you have to clarify things. So, but people are perplexed in many different generations. And HaRav Kook wrote Lenevochei Hador, to the perplexed of our generation. This is 100 and something years ago. It will be in 9 years. It will be 100 years to HaRav Kook's passing. So this is 100 and something years ago. In any case, this is a longer passage than we're used to in HaRav Kook. It's great. Let's get to work. There are those who think that a person cannot have a whole and sincere heart in believing in the truth of the Torah of Moshe as is fitting, unless he regards all other beliefs as entirely false and worthless, with no advantage whatsoever to those who hold them. But this is not true. So HaRav Kook says some people think that to be a good Jew who really believes in the Torah and to put down all other religions and say they are totally void of any value, they're total nonsense, they have no role in the world, it's just garbage, and we have the full truth and everything else is just false, entirely false and worthless. HaRav Kook's words. And HaRav Kook says, no, this is not true. Let's see what is true. Indeed, certain ideas current within the Jewish people have led many among the masses to think this way. There are Jews who think this way, and they're trying to be good Jews, so they're putting down other religions. But HaRav Kook says, wait a minute. This notion has at times also helped to strengthen Jewish faith in the hearts of the less intellectually developed, who are unable to grasp the exaltedness and holiness of our sacred Torah, except by considering other beliefs to be mere errors of no value at all. Some people need this. They can't grasp it, that a different religion can have some truth, some value, and it's not the same as our Torah. So how can that be? So either we're false or they're false. So to believe that we're not false, we say they're totally false. HaRav Kook says that's okay. Some people can't get it intellectually that is not necessarily the case. So to strengthen their belief in the Torah, they look at other religions and think that they're total errors with no value at all. But I don't think that's true, says HaRav Kook, and he's going to explain this. As I was reading this, I was reminded of something else HaRav Kook says, and now I forgot it. 1 second. Okay, it's not coming back to me right now, so we'll have to move on. Maybe it'll come back. However, says HaRav Kook, I don't agree with that. Many harmful consequences also arise from this flawed way of thinking. For the impression of contempt that becomes deeply ingrained in the hearts of the masses towards other beliefs leads to the existence of wicked individuals who apply this very same measure even to the pure faith of Israel. So first of all, sorry, maybe it's what came back, maybe it's what I was thinking of before, maybe it's something different. I think this is not so different than HaRav Kook looking at Jews who hold opinions that are different from the Torah or against the Torah and teaching us that they are not, what we have to do is not to totally fight them. There's some truth in what they're saying. If we take the grain of truth from within what they're saying and put it together with Torah, then we can help them keep the truth that is giving them excitement, that gives them energy, that gives them purpose and value in life, and we can connect it to the Torah rather than try to override them and totally erase them, which is not wise, not possible, because there is a grain of truth in there. I feel that now he's saying the same thing about other religions. Again, add to that, that HaRav Kook now says, when we have contempt towards other religions, we are actually strengthening also the other side when we get the contempt from other people and other religions. If it's okay to have an opinion, it's okay to disagree, to reject, to try and prove that something else is wrong, to argue with it, to try and convince other people that they are wrong. But when it leads to contempt, that's not right. And it becomes so deeply ingrained in us that it's not so different. It leads to the existence of others in other nations and religions who apply this very same measure towards us. So that's not a good way to go in the world.
Not necessarily other beliefs.
Maybe even within Am Yisrael. Meaning if religious Jews are showing contempt to other religions, certainly in the modern liberal world, there will be Jews who will feel contempt towards the Jewish religion. I hear that. Therefore, says HaRav Kook, we must deepen our understanding of the value of other beliefs in the light of the Torah. Meaning, I'm not saying we're going to make an equilibrium here. They're all on the same level. But we have to look through the light of the Torah, or some other people might say through the eyes of the Torah, through the glasses, through the what? The lens, thank you, the lens of the Torah, to look at the other religions. But while we do that, it doesn't mean that we should look at them as having no value at all, but to find to find out for ourselves what is the value of those religions and how they can be part of the process. That's why I brought the Rambam before, to say, you see, HaRav Kook is not making it all up from nothing. The Rambam is saying that even though I reject Christianity and Islam, they do have some value, even if their only value is to bring us to something in the future, and what they're saying now is not true. But there's some value. So let's look at religion, says HaRav Kook, deepen our understanding of the value of other beliefs through the lens of the Torah. And thus, we must divide the totality of beliefs found in the world into three categories, aside from the Torah of Israel. So I'm beginning, says HaRav Kook, and I'm going to divide other beliefs into three categories. Number one, the worst of all, the lowest, the worst of all beliefs are idolatry, which do not know or recognize a single creator at all. Those beliefs will still have many gods, and the gods are struggling, like we know from Roman and Greek mythology and things like that. That's the lowest. They don't recognize a single creator at all. Above them are beliefs that have not been cleansed of the taint of idolatry, meaning they do believe in a God that is above all, but there are also lower gods. And sometimes we have to worship other gods because they are part of the one top God's kingdom, and so on, things like that, which is how the Rambam describes what's called avodat kochavim. Idolatry in rabbinic terminology is sometimes called avodat kochavim, the worship of stars. Why kochavim? It explains the Rambam that in the ancient world, the high and low, it was clear that the stars are above us. We're down here, and the stars are up there. And there's connection between this world and the God above, and it goes through all kinds of channels. And the stars are one of the channels between us and the top God. And because we can't reach the top God, at least we can worship the intermediators, like the stars. So that's why idolatry and avodat kochavim are connected. It's kind of worship of gods that are part of the pantheon. Am I in the right word? I use the right word, or any other form of putting together the sky. The figures in the of the gods and so on. So there is a top God, but there are also other gods under him who we need to worship because we can't reach the top God, or because it's a way to reach the top God. And in Judaism, that's absolutely clearly forbidden. And above them all, and we're not talking about Judaism, we're talking about other religions, three categories. The highest of the other religions are beliefs that are free of all idolatry, yet nonetheless follow a path different from that of our Holy Torah, which may include or may not include, meaning Christianity and Islam are certainly not on the lowest of the three. Are they on the top or in the middle? That's a good question. It's a halachic question of how rabbis treated Islam and Christianity, whether they considered them false beliefs but not idolatry, or idolatry. And in Christianity, there's something that is common. Jews, even I would say knowledgeable Jews, often say, well, we all know that Christianity is idolatry and Islam is not idolatry. And I have to say that that's not black and white, because there are there's an extensive discussion about Christianity. There are those who differentiate between different sects of Christianity. Do they have statues in the church or not? What is their belief of the Son of God? Do they think of him as symbolic, or they think of him as God? How important is Jesus in the religion? Are they praying to Jesus or to the God? All kinds of differences that can be there between, let's start with Catholics and Lutherans and some other, I'm not so knowledgeable about all kinds of different sects, but there can be differences there. There's another consideration, which is the question of, is there aspect of idolatry something that they really believe in, or is it just one of the forms of religious
Expressions.
yeah, but there's a term for it. Religious what do you say when we perform our avodah in the mikdash? We would call that a ritual. Thank you, a ritual. So they have rituals that they've have come down from previous generations that include things that would be considered idolatry, but they don't really believe in those. It's just the way that they do things because they've accepted these kind of rituals that were passed on through the generations. All kinds of different discussions, even about Islam, where it's true that almost all the rabbinic authorities consider not to be idolatry. There is at least one opinion that says that it is, but it's considered cleaner in the beliefs than Christianity. And I'm not sure that today we are happy with that definition, considering, I'm not saying the Christians are all tremendous Israel lovers, but the Muslims are certainly less in a generalization. Of course, each individual is an individual. But in any case, I'm just saying it's not so simple. There are many things to be considered. And I'm going to repeat, I think I said this last time we met. I came across this piece through an article that I really liked. It's some 30 pages long, I think. And it discusses in halachic criteria and this discussion, philosophical, religious emunah, the relationship of Jews to Christianity. And it shows how the rabbis went through a process over generations. And part of it is because of what I described before, that some of their rituals, they don't really believe in them. They just keep them because of things that have been passed on throughout generations. And some of it is because Christianity itself the beliefs of Christianity go through certain changes and have been cleansed to a certain extent over generations. So it's not necessarily the same exact beliefs as it was 2,000 years ago. And that needs to be considered for us, not to say Christianity is okay, but to say maybe the distance between Judaism and Christianity can be thought about in a new way. In any case, these are the three categories. So as I said, Christianity and Islam are certainly not on the bottom, maybe in the middle, maybe on the top. They are not truth, they are not Judaism, but we have to make this, we have to understand, we have to divide the different beliefs and religions in the world to these three categories and then work on from there. So now HaRav Kook is going to start with the bottom of those three categories with idolatry. And he says the following: with regard to idolatry, we are forbidden to practice tolerance in action. We are forbidden to practice tolerance in action to idolatry. He's going to explain why. This is something unique to us, the people of God. For no other nation or language in the world can be compared to us in this respect, because Hashem has established us in His world to serve as witness to His glory, to the light of His divinity, His providence, and the knowledge of His blessed name. So because we have the responsibility and the mission to witness, serve as witnesses to Hashem's light and providence and name and so on, so we are forbidden to practice tolerance towards idolatry, because that absolutely directly negates the name of Hashem and so on. Therefore, we are obligated to devote all our deeds, speech, and thoughts, both individually and collectively, solely to this purpose, to bring about the knowledge of the one name of God in the world. This is our mission. Since humanity cannot reach its full spiritual and material perfection except when the name of God fills the entire earth, only then can the true understanding be firmly established in the heart that all human beings are brothers and must conduct themselves towards one another with love and fraternity, despite differences of race and nation. So HaRav Kook is saying, he said this in many different places, in many different ways. For instance, in one of his writings that I have been familiar with for a long time, he says that Judaism includes the belief that the goal is morality, but the basis of morality is the name of Hashem. And if you have the name of Hashem and you act immorally, so you have the basis, but you're not reaching the point. And if you have morality, but you don't have belief in one God, in Hashem, then you have something good, but you don't have the basis for it, and it's not going to remain, it won't be steady, and it's even very weak because it doesn't really have a basis if you don't have the belief in God. In any case, similar to that, Kook is saying, we have to bring the world to recognize the name of the one God, and that is also the basis for all human beings to understand we are all created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim. We are all brothers. We must all conduct ourselves with love and fraternity, despite all of the differences. And that's not going to happen. That moral aspect, practical human behavior towards one another, is not going to happen without everyone accepting the name of the one God. Therefore, the result of that is we have to oppose idolatry. And he says, even the individual elevation of a person to a lofty level of pure and true thought is impossible without knowledge of the true God, because it stems from clinging on to, from trying to hang on to work up towards this lofty level of purity of the true God. Thus, idolatry prevents all divine good from appearing in the world, and we, in particular, are obligated not to treat it with tolerance. So until now, several words of HaRav Kook are very adamant, maybe even aggressive in a way. No tolerance towards idolatry. Taking a very strong stance. Although he explains why, because only through negating and rejecting and not being tolerant towards idolatry, only then will we reach the goal of all human beings understanding that we are brothers and so on. At the same time, HaRav Kook is now going to say, but that does not mean that even idolatry, it doesn't mean that it's void of any value. At the same time, here it comes, we must not harbor hatred in our hearts towards idol worshippers, or consider them guilty for practicing idolatry. For what blame can be assigned to them when they merely follow the practices of their ancestors? Rather, we must safeguard both ourselves and all of humanity, so that it may come to recognize the truth by raising before it the banner of the name of God and His glory. Therefore, we must distance ourselves greatly from all matters related to idolatry. So we have to reject idolatry. But the number one, what's the word I'm looking for now in English? I've made it clear we have to reject idolatry. We have to distance ourselves greatly from all matters related to idolatry. If there is, not like I said about Christianity, that maybe there is something there that has moved away from idolatry, but if we go to the places in the world where idolatry is still idolatry, the same old idolatry, we don't have to go to war with them. We certainly don't have to show something unpleasant or aggressive towards the worshipers, because they are not to be blamed of anything. But at the same time, we distance ourselves greatly from all matters related to idolatry. So the first differentiation that he said, or I would say I'm looking for the word in English for the Hebrew word, histaigut. He's saying something very clear, and at the same time, he's, how would you say, mistayeg?
He's having reservations.
Okay. He's being very clear. Reject, not to be tolerant, and to stay away from matters related to idolatry. And he's having reservations about that. Number one, about the people. The people who are worshiping idols are not bad people. They are created in the image of God. They are good human beings. We have nothing against them as people. But, says HaRav Kook, we're not finished. There is, however, another aspect as well. At times there are nations, just like there are nations in the world, said the Rambam, that need Christianity and Islam to move forward. There are nations that have elevated themselves in their morality, such that despite being idol worshippers, they stand at a respectable level in ethics, character, and proper conduct. So there can be a nation of idol worshippers that nonetheless has moved up and brought themselves, because idol worshiping, I once studied with HaRav Dov Berkovich, if anyone knows HaRav Eliezer Berkovich, that's his son, who lives in Shiloh here in Israel. I really appreciate him, and I studied a certain course with him, and I appreciate other things that he's done. And he taught us the prophet Hosea, the first of the 12 of Treasar. And what he showed us was that the question of belief in Hashem or in other gods is not only a question of who is the king, but what is the kingdom about? Because idolatry is about power, about force, about jealousy, about who's going to be stronger, and we have to appease the gods so that they won't hurt us and so on. Whereas belief in Hashem is in love, is in chesed, is in being and connecting to God's holiness so that we will be holy, connecting to God's chesed so we will emulate Him and perform chesed ourselves and so on. So it's not only about who is the God, but what is that God, what is the belief about? And so here he's saying it can be that there are people who worship idols, and yet they have moved up to a respectable level in ethics, character, and proper conduct. Consequently, their idolatrous practices and customs are not as abominable or repugnant, am I pronouncing that properly, as those of others. Thus, it is impossible to regard all idolatrous nations as if they are all in the same state in terms of their faith. We don't say everywhere where there is idolatry, we totally reject them, we hate them, we show what was the word that he used before earlier? We show them contempt. We show them all the same contempt. No, you have to get to know them, understand where they're at. If their idolatry is still such that they encourage murder or all kinds of other negative violence, all kinds of other negative actions, then they're still far away. So we very even stronger. We reject them and so on. Even though the people who practice that religion, we don't reject them as much. But some nations who are still have idolatry, yet they've moved to a respectable level in ethics, character, and proper conduct. So we have to look at them as different. So you have to study the different nations and beliefs of idolatry to know how to make differentiations between them. Moreover, even within idolatry, there exists a spark of morality, at least a spark. And again, HaRav Kook says the same thing about different levels of understanding of Judaism. For out of fear, people refrain from the worst evils, each nation according to its understanding, and at least draw closer to good conduct within human society. HaRav Kook says the same about Jews. How do you understand accepting the yoke of God? Do you think God is big and strong, and I'm weak, therefore I accept the yoke of God? And it's not because I think that there's truth. It's not because that I think there are beautiful values. I don't connect to him. But what can I do? He's big and strong. I'm small and weak. So I have to do what he says. Okay? At least if he says, lo tirtzach and lo tignov, so you adhere to that. That's better than if you didn't believe in him. It's not the highest level that I expect today. I expect you to have an inner understanding and identification with lo tirtzach and lo tignov, and to worship Hashem, who gave that to the world in Aseret HaDivrot, because the whole world has learned that since then, or not the whole world yet, but most of the world at least in a certain level. So I connect to Hashem and I accept the yoke of Hashem because His Torah has moved the world forward. But okay, even if you accept it just because He's big and strong, I'm small and weak, it's better than if you don't have it. And HaRav Kook is saying that is true also about idolatry. Even within idolatry, there exists a spark of morality, for out of fear, people refrain from the worst evils, each nation according to its understanding, and at least draw closer, not on a high level, but a bit closer to good conduct within human society. So we have to accept that not all idolatry is the same, and even the worst idolatry has some spark of something positive. Therefore, we should recognize that as long as idolatry, I'm going to end after this paragraph, I'm going to stop. Therefore, we should recognize that as long as idolatry still exists in the world, it serves a certain purpose. If we were to pressure people to accept the yoke of the kingdom of heaven and abandon their idols before they are ready, and instead of benefiting them, as we might imagine, we would hire them, for example, next week. We're going to have to stop at some point. And we're going to have to move on from this relating to the lowest level, idol worshippers, to how did this bring us to relate to Christianity and Islam. But in any case, for today, let's try and give this in short. You don't have to look at other, to be a good Jew, you don't have to think that other religions are mere errors of no value at all. You don't have to think that. It can be harmful because it brings to contempt to them, and then it creates contempt towards us. We must deepen our understanding of other nations and religions. There are three levels: idolatry, partial idolatry, where there are still gods, but there is a higher God who is on the top of it all, and then there is the level of, there's the level of religions that came from the Torah that accepted that there is only one God. We have to not be tolerant towards idolatry, we stay far away from anything that has to do with idolatry. We distance ourselves greatly from all matters of idolatry, but we do not say that all the people who worship idolatry are guilty, are terrible people. We can still have a positive relationship with them as people, as individuals. And even more than that, we can even start looking at idolatry as not being totally only negative. First of all, there are nations that are growing gradually in morality, in character, in proper conduct, in ethics. And even if they are idol worshippers, it means that their idolatry has become a little more refined, I would call it. But it's not as abominable or repugnant. And also, even on the lowest levels of idolatry, there is at least something positive there, that it creates a certain restriction and boundaries for people, and they don't just perform the worst evils as if there's no God or nothing that you have to answer to. So there's at least something positive, even of the lowest in the lowest forms of idolatry. So we're going to stop here for today to leave at least a little time for people to express their thoughts. I'll stop the sharing, but if someone wants me to show a certain part of it, obviously I can do that. And I'm reminding you that we are not going to finish it today, but there's still another part that we'll get to next time. B'kasha, Michael.
So this brings up the question of are we to proselytize other people or not? I know I was told growing up that, oh, Jews don't do that. And now I'm wondering if that was kind of baked into the society because it was harmful to do those things, that you'd get blowback that would hurt the Jewish people, but surely it wouldn't be because it was the wrong thing to do. If we're really supposed to be a light unto the nations, don't you have to show them the light? So how do you see that?
Absolutely. I think that it's true in the sense that we don't send missionaries to make people Jewish. We don't try to make people Jewish. We have, at least for the very least, we have a lot of work to do within the Jews to strengthen Judaism before we go to make other people Jewish. I love converts. We have the schut, the merit to meet some beautiful, wonderful converts. Nothing against them, chas v'shalom. But if you overdo it, it gets watered down. But at the same time, we certainly do think that we have a mission to bring a light to the world, belief in God, and the point of the belief in God, which is chesed and morality, and all that. Then there's a question of how to do it. I have had disagreements with rabbis about relationship with non-Jews, because my point was, and I think that HaRav Kook would say this, although it's speculative. I don't think he says it explicitly, although he does say it explicitly on certain levels. But I would go a bit further of what he says explicitly. He says explicitly you have to know the non-Jews, the other nations, to understand their culture, their philosophy, the projects that they've done in history and their books and so on. Their sifrut, what's the word in English? Their
Literature.
sorry?
Literature.
Their literature, right? Because it tells you about who these people are. And if you want to love the world, and if you want to influence, you have to know who they are and so on. But not on the level that I'm trying to get them to convert to Judaism. On the level that what I aspire to achieve is that they should believe in Hashem, in one God, in the one God, in the Creator, and in the Torah of Moshe. And the Torah of Moshe doesn't say that they have to keep 613 mitzvot. And also, so these other rabbis sometimes argued with me because their point was it's dangerous to be in close relationships with non-Jews. So I said, so how are you going to influence the world? And they say, no, it means that we do it spiritually, it emanates from us, which is beautiful. But I don't think it's enough. I do think we have to go out there and be proactive. But as I say, it's not I stress it, I mention it often because I think it creates something negative when we only think of Jews and all the non-Jews we throw them on the wayside and say, oh, they're not important. I don't care about the goyim, and I explicitly use the term goyim in Hebrew, like the way it's used in a derogatory way, and not goyim, because I don't use the term goyim. It's said in a way which is derogatory, and I don't want that to be the case. At the same time, you don't see me devoting 10% of my time to being Mekarev Goyim, to belief in Hashem and 7 Noahide laws. Although not I individually, the group that I'm part of was approached by a group of Russians who are Noahides, and they're looking for rabbis to answer their questions when they have questions. And they approached our group of rabbis, Beit Hillel, and the message went out in Beit Hillel, who wants to be part of a group is going to be the address for these Noahides in Russia who are looking for rabbis to answer their questions. And for years I've thought that it's a beautiful thing to do. And I joined the group, and we had one question so far. That's the one question they asked. And I wasn't, I'm so busy. Didn't have time to be part of the discussion. And they asked me, do you want to be part of the group? I said, yeah, keep me in. I want to see the discussion, even if I can't be an active participant. Maybe one day, maybe they'll come visit Israel and we'll get to meet them. So that's a higher aspiration. It is. And so I think we've been mistaught. I think we're kind of being defensive, because if we don't want Christians doing missionary in our communities, so we don't want to present ourselves as doing missionary in their communities. I don't think it's the same. I don't think we're trying to convert them to Judaism. But you know what? At least let's agree on belief in one God and no idolatry and morality. If we can achieve that, there's still more room to move farther forward. But wow, if we reach that, we've really made tremendous progress. But I think there's a subtlety there. We are not seeking to influence the world. We don't only care about ourselves. We do care about the whole world. That's very important. But at the same time, we are not trying to make them Jewish. We would like to have positive influence on the world. I would put it that way. For now.
Sounds good.
Bבקשה. Eliezer,
I have a problem. So issue if I thought
please speak up.
try.
Please yell.
My doctor today told me I don't have to be able to talk so well. He said, when you reach a certain age, you're allowed to be less forceful. Anyway,
Because until today, you've been a very forceful person. Okay.
right. So, the problem, I have a lot of problems in this regard. First of all, there's the issue of ethics versus religion. I mean, like, you might like the other people's ethics, although you don't like their religion. Like in Buddhism, and that Buddhism and Hinduism give me a real problem, because they're classic idolatry, and they've existed for a long time, especially Hinduism. And so therefore, they might not have learned that there's probably interplay, but they probably had their own ideas of ethics before they came into contact with Judaism. And so then you have the problem, okay, you might be willing to talk to some people who are excellent people, but one might have, I don't know, I mean, one might have to reject their culture. I mean, like, there are these museums of Indian and Chinese culture, which are clearly idolatry. And so, what's your opinion about that?
Well, first of all, I don't know what you mean by these museums. I can say that I don't know enough about any of these, but I certainly don't see signs of you mentioned the Chinese. I'm just saying that they are not a good example, like you're saying what you're saying about Hinduism. So the Chinese have been acted in very unethical, very unethical ways for a long time.
Well,
So
but there's Confucius.
yeah, okay, but I don't know, how strong is Confucius in China?
Depends on you talk with.
In practical terms, not in philosophical terms. I don't know.
But I mean, there's
The periodical in which I read the article about the change in relation to Christianity. By the way, these are Talmidim of HaRav Eliezer Melamed who wrote this. It's not some fringe leftist liberal group who wrote it. These are people who live in Har Bacha and are students of HaRav Melamed, and they're writing this. Very interesting group. I really think very highly of them. There is also in that same periodical an article about Hinduism, which I haven't read. Why did I read the one about Christianity and not about Hinduism? For two reasons. First of all, it was the first article in the periodical. And there was a Shabbat because of the war, that there was not much going on. So I had a lot of time to read. I read that one. And I haven't reached the one about Hinduism since. And also because I know something about Christianity and I know nothing about Hinduism. And I've heard that Hinduism should be looked into because there's certain positive things there. So I don't know. Okay. Maybe there's something about Buddhism, but Hinduism, they're very different that I should look into. Maybe HaRav Kook is telling me, look at Buddhism and Hinduism, make a comparison, see what influence it's had on them. Because that's not the same as the ancient idol worshippers who would cut off anyone's head just to gain something small. Okay. There's something I have to study there. And that's part of looking at other nations. Even if they are idol worshippers, they have some ethical values. So that's something I have to look into. And that's what I would say. I don't know enough about it or anything about it to answer your question. But let me read the article about Hinduism, hopefully. But in any case, I also saw something that HaRav Melamed himself was the rabbi of these rabbis who wrote these articles, that he wrote something once about Hinduism. I don't remember what, but I could try and look it up. I know that he and HaRav Melamed does something very interesting. He gets into a certain project. He has a kollel of his Talmidim, and they're all studying Torah. That's what they do. But they get into a certain topic, and they pull together a tremendous amount of sources about this topic, and then they write a book about it. Very orderly. That's the book that we study on Shabbat afternoon about Giyur. HaRav Melamed didn't do this work by himself. It's tremendous what he's done. He's created a kollel where they all work with him, and they find another source and another rabbi and another opinion, and then they put it together in order. So they're working on a book about the relationship between Jews and non-Jews. I'm still waiting for the book. I know they're working on it. It's going to be another great book by them with different opinions and all kinds of, it's great work that they do. So maybe they'll put out a book about Judaism's attitude to other religions, and they'll have definitions for that. I don't know. There's a lot of work to be done. But at least I can learn from HaRav Kook that don't just mesh everything together. They're all just Avodah Zarah. They're all just Goyim. They're all unimportant. No. There are different kinds of people, different kinds of nations, different kinds of religions. Some of them are very violent and aggressive, and some of them are more ethical. Some of them are more, I don't like it. They're focused on their own spiritual experiences, including nirvana and all kinds of things, rather than going out there to change the world. They believe that it's not our responsibility to change the world. My responsibility is to reach my own spiritual nirvana. I don't buy that. I don't agree with that. That doesn't make them bad people. They're not negative people. They're not hurting anyone when they're in nirvana. So there's a lot to be discussed, but it has to be discussed in a serious, meticulous way and not just throwing out generalizations about everybody else in the world who's not a religious Jew. That's an important point. Including, if I mentioned before, in the halachic discussion, which I am familiar with on a certain level about Christianity being Avodah Zarah or not being Avodah Zarah, that the differentiations can be very clear. You have to study different sects of Christianity and check all kinds of things out. But here you're talking about Eastern religions, which I'm not familiar with. And okay, so HaRav Kook is telling me, even there's work that has to be done. And we'll keep on moving from there. It's very valuable. Last but not least, comments. Mark.
When you talk about idolatry, I mean, I think the summary is that we reject idolatry, but we don't reject the idolaters. The summary.
I would, for me, that's part of the summary, but it's no less important. And another part was that we reject idolatry, but it doesn't mean that it's of no value at all. Even idolatry itself can be on different levels of growing in purification, and even the lowest levels have some value because they give people the message that there are restrictions in the world and you can't just do it. You have someone above you to answer to.
Yeah, I just wanted to start with that as an opening line. And
Okay.
then I just go to, if you like, a little bit of a parable. I hope you don't mind a little bit of a slight turn in the road. I have two 9-year-old granddaughters who love to watch a show with me called Anne of Green Gables. And it's a story about this young orphan girl who's incredibly talented. And she grows up in Prince Edward Island, of all places, remote Canada wilderness. Why am I telling you this? Because she eventually, in this show, contacts a tribe of First Nations, Indian people, American Indian. And one of the things that happens is that the Christian missionaries who are, around, say, hey, look, the kids of these savages, which is the term that they use, the kids of these savages must be brought up in the ways of the world so that they can adapt in the world. The world is changing. You've got to fit into the world. And so why don't you send your kids to our schools, and we will bring them up in the ways of the modern world, and we will teach them, and so on. And of course, what this led to, and this is actually really true, what this led to is incredible abuses of these children that continued in Canada, of all countries, until the 1970s. I kid you not. And the reason I'm saying all this is because, yes, there is value. First of all, there's the imposition of, there's the statement here, instead of benefiting them, as we might imagine, we would harm them by bringing.
Well, we haven't discussed that yet. That was just a kind of a hint, peek into what we'll do next time.
And that certainly has happened in these particular cases. But more than that, I would say more than that, generally, what happens with these things? I mean, what's being depicted in this show, and what I've discussed with my grandchildren, is the fact that the entire culture of these First Nations people is being destroyed. And the reason it's being destroyed, of course, is because the Europeans want to take over the land, take over all the resources, amongst other reasons. But that culture is then lost. And there are many things in that culture which are incredibly valuable to humanity. They may arise from cultures that we don't understand or agree with entirely, but there are things there that are tremendously valuable. One of the things that occurs to me as we're having this discussion, for example, is, there's I'm sure it's abused in many ways. There's I think in Judaism, there's a statement that we should be fruitful and multiply, which is fine, and we should dominate the world. Well, there's dominate and there's dominate.
Yeah, it depends how you understand dominate.
Precisely. And what I'm trying to lead to is that, for example, First Nations, at least in America, Canada, and South America, have lived somewhat in harmony with nation.
Yes.
Let's call it sustainability, okay? And we have a lot to learn on that. Juxtaposed against what some people interpret dominate to mean.
First of all, the last part of what you said, we're going to end after this, okay? The last thing that you said takes me back to what I said before about Eastern religions, about meditating and nirvana and things like that, and not being active in changing the world for the better. At the same time, I would take something that I would learn from them, exactly what you're saying, better harmony with the world. But sometimes harmony is with the world as it is, and I'm not going to correct what needs to be corrected. And sometimes I overdo correcting, and that's what I hear from you in this example, this show that you're telling us about, and the danger of being aware of that. And I think it goes very well with what HaRav Kook is saying, because I look at another religion and I see that if there is something positive there that's creating something for these people and it's improving their ethics, then there must be something in there that I have to look for and identify. And I don't have full understanding of everything, so that there's a process going on in the world, and don't come with a heavy. I'm looking for the words in English. Don't come with a big giant, one of these giant trucks with a big giant roller thing that rolls over a pavement.
Steamroller.
Steamroller, right, to pave the new road, and just roll over another culture and put it down and rebuild them the way that we know is the truth. We're the modern, we're the this, we're the that. I agree, that. It doesn't mean that we don't have any aspirations to change things or correct things or influence. And I think, yes, we have to be very wise about it. One of the things I believe about in the world is that part of the reason that I believe in a process is because it gives you a chance to see maybe I'm doing something too much or too little, and I could correct it along the way.
Correct.
So, and that has an advantage. That also has a disadvantage. I'll give an example that I'm going to speak about maybe on Yom Ha'atzmaut that I learned recently, that Ben Gurion, when the minute the state of Israel was established, of course, the war broke out for a year and a half. And immediately, one of the first things Ben Gurion did was Aliyah. You know that within the first 2 years of the state of Israel, a country of 600,000 people brought in 900,000. Now, if you would have asked me, I would have said, it's not a good time now. We're at war. First, let's finish the war, then let's start bringing Aliyah. 900,000 people in 2 years, we're not going to be able to, it's too much. We're not going to be able to do this in a good way. Let's create a process. Let's have people put on a list. And we'll bring in more Olim and more. And Ben Gurion was right, and I would have been wrong. So sometimes you need to do something in a more aggressive, acute way. Sometimes you need to checks and balances. If you're advocating for checks and balances, I would be in full agreement. And I think HaRav Kook is hinting to that when he's saying, or referring to that when he's saying, they're not void of any value. Don't look at them that way. Because it's not only that I'm going to be, again, what was the word that he used towards them in the beginning? Not only if I
Tolerant.
treat, sorry?
Tolerant?
Contempt. If I relate to them in contempt, with contempt, they're going to
Okay.
relate to me with contempt. It's not only because of that, it's because it's wrong to make it all just one big blotch of negative and wipe it out. That's wrong. So if we want to have a better influence, we have to study them and understand where we see positive points, where we see negative points, and try and put some sense into the process. Going back to Michael's question, we do want to have an influence on the world, but it has to be done in a wiser way than also Christian missionaries have done, and also sometimes other. Certainly, the United States of America now is questioning, on a certain level, what was done to the American Indians, including culturally. What was there? I'm not interested now in believing in gods that I see in a little bit in Indian mythology or things like that. But I'm sure that there are other things there that certainly should not be erased. Absolutely. Okay, there's still a lot
Thank you.
to discuss.
Thank you.
We're I think we've gone more than 50% of the piece, but we still have the second half to get into in 3 weeks, Be'ezrat Hashem.
Okay, thank you very much. Good night,
Yal
everybody.
koach.
Bye.
Good to see you,
Take care.
everybody.
Laila
Bye.
tov.
Laila tov. Bye.